Episode 161 of the Wilderness Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. If you want to join the Patreon club, you can go to patreon.com/thewildernesspodcast. Our supporter of the week is Matt Belden. Thank you so much for supporting the show. All right, quick note before we start today's episode. It's a bit of a doozy. After the recording, Jagex came out with another updated dev blog about the gear rebalances. That's not included in this episode, but we'll tackle it on 162. All right, anyways, let's get into the episode. Welcome to episode 161 of the Wilderness Podcast. I am Dills, and joining with me is Magpies and Heartless. How are you guys doing?
What's good, everybody?
Hey.
So we got a doozy of an episode today. Let's start off light, though, with some Puro improvements and Barbarian Assault changes. I didn't know people were asking for this, but hey, maybe I missed something, but that'll happen. But the big one, the Great Nerf is upon us. Jagex is rebalancing, or they would like to rebalance a whole whack of items, a whole whack of endgame items. Lots of nerfs going on. A lot of people are not very happy. It's a very controversial change they plan on doing. And the icing on top, they're not even going to pull it. It's an integrity change. But we'll get into that shortly. Magpies, how has your week been?
Pretty good. Pretty busy with real life stuff. I haven't done much in game, but I did the 20th anniversary birthday event. That was pretty cool.
Cool. How was it?
It's good, but I've noticed after they said they were going to change the way they approach holiday events and commit less dev time to them, they've actually been just fetch quests, and it's you literally just go here, do this, go there, do that. There's nothing just talk to this guy. There's no substance behind them.
That's true. If I were to ask you guys, mentioning the past holiday events, what's the first one that comes to your head or to your mind? I can't talk today. I'm a little tired.
I remember there was one way back in the day, maybe 2006 or 2007, when it was a Christmas event, and maybe it was 2008. You teleported into this weird snowy area with a bunch of trolls, and you had to help this troll chick. Or maybe there was also a Halloween event where you teleported to this alternate dimension. Maybe someone could help me pinpoint it, because I'm just going off of nostalgic memory right now. But
I think there was one in Draenor Village. I think I remember that one where you would go and you'd have a snowball fight and it was just full of players. Do you remember that? That was maybe in 2007 or 8.
I don't remember that. I remember Draenor was where you started one of the random events I'm talking about, but you teleport inside a snow globe, I think, or was that a newer one?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then you teleport to another dimension that was all snowy, and then it was full of players and trolls and all sorts of stuff. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I know in RuneScape 3, they I don't know if this is a common trend. When I played RS3 a few times, and when I do play RS3, I'm always focusing on the quests. There was a quest, I think you go inside of a snow globe, and then you're in this world, and you have to dodge these giant snowballs that are rolling down mountains and stuff like that.
That might be it.
I'm pretty sure it was a past Christmas event, but I'm sure there's been loads in between.
Either way, I see your point. They haven't been the greatest recently.
Because the first one I think of is the Halloween event where you're, what is it? What's his name? It's one of the horror
Chambers of Herrick.
That one was funny.
No.
That one was really good.
I think Jason from Friday the 13th.
Oh, Murder Mystery. Yeah, the one they turned into a quest.
Although I don't think they turned this one into a quest, because it was underwater, and he would throw something at you, and you had to dodge it by I don't remember. But point is, they were a much more, I guess, theatrical. That sometimes, or at least once, they turned it into a quest afterwards because it was so well done. So, anyways, I agree with your point where it's just fetch quests and stuff, which is kind of a shame, I suppose, but they're easy to make, so I don't know, whatever.
Other than that, though, I just have been solely AFK fishing. I got a couple fishing levels, working my way up to 91 for the Mauritania Elites, which is my last diary remaining. I just went super dry on all types of PVM. I'm still super dry in Chambers. I'm 4 times the drop rate for an item. I've seen 3.6 million points, I think, at this point, if not more. Which, the average item is like around 900,000 points.
That
so
sounds like a lot.
I'm like, I should have seen 4 items by now, but who cares? Nightmare's still pretty dry, even though I got the Nightmare staff. And then the only place where I'm not dry is actually Theater of Blood. Just before we started recording this, actually a few hours ago, before I went to the gym, I asked some boys in the CC, some WoW boys, to help me get through the theater real quick, because I was working on this Fashionscape outfit that was. Have you guys ever watched Boondocks?
Yeah.
Nope.
So Boondocks is this old Adult Swim show, but super funny. Cat Williams plays a pimp.
Oh.
And he's got a purple suit and a cane.
Is it Thuglicious? No. Thugnificent?
No. It's Slickback.
Yeah, a pimp named Slickback. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a pimp named Slickback.
It's a great show.
Yeah. So I was talking with a buddy of mine, and we were trying to find a way to get a pimp named Slickback's Fashionscape into the game. And we realized we need the Dawnbringer from Theater of Blood, and we also needed a bounty hunter kill. So I just asked a couple wild boys. I got Cosmonaut to join me in Bounty Hunter, which is officially dead, by the way. Bounty Hunter is we were the only people in the wilderness on that world for Bounty Hunter on a Saturday early afternoon. So just letting you guys know, Bounty Hunter is officially dead. This is why PvP content, is as dead as it is.
You heard it here first.
Don't worry. The Din's Bulwark nerf will help that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I got the Bounty Hunter tier 1 hat, which you need to kill one target in Bounty Hunter. The moment we entered the wilderness, it just matched me almost immediately with him, just because we're the only people there. So, oh well. And then I got the Prince tunic from the Frog random event.
Nice.
And got the Dawnbringer. And I actually told them, I told the guys, we're going to get a purple this run. The pimp suit demands a purple. And we ended up pulling a scythe. So
no, that's
for
sick.
So for the second straight week, I have a scythe, which now means I'm back on drop rate for them. I was super dry. I have really good RNG when it comes to untradables, like pets and mutagens and stuff. Check out my Zarog, by the way. But tradable items, T-bows, scythes, I'm normally pretty unlucky. I've yet to see a T-bow in my name, which is what leads me to my last thing that I did this week, which is I broke 1,500 Chambers Casey. So I'm...
Oh, nice. Great.
Yeah, so I'm now, I think, 1.5 times the drop rate with the amount of items I've seen for a T-bow, which is, I think, 1 in 50, if I'm not mistaken.
T-bow 1 in 49, yeah. It's like 1 in 1,000 raids, roughly, if you're getting 30k points.
Yeah. So... that plus the 350 challenge modes that I've done puts me, I think, I believe my log has about 80 or 90 items now. I have 40 scrolls. Probably less than that, actually, but I definitely know I'm over the drop rate for a T-bow. But it is what it is. As long as I'm part of the split, I'm happy. I just need I need Mega Rares to finish my collection log for Chambers, so hopefully we'll finish that soon. That's
Very nice.
Pretty much my week in a nutshell. I haven't done much, but slow and steady.
Not bad. Heartless, what have you been up to?
Damn, I can't quite compete with Magpies this week, but I've...
why do we let him go first? No.
So I was doing Sarah and I got that ACB last week, so with God Wars Dungeon Instancing coming out, I decided to take a break from Sarah and move on to Bandos, just to test it out. Mm-hmm. And day one, it wasn't even that... it was busy, but you could easily find a world. And now that we're a week in, I've been grinding Bandos. It's pretty easy to find a world. You hop maybe once, maybe twice, because theoretically Ironmen only need to get one of each item, and then they're never going back. So it's not camped like it is for other people. So I've been grinding that. I've been using the dragon bolts, which I have to get from Vorkath. So I've also learned melee Vorkath along the way, and it's actually rather enjoyable. I don't dislike it. I really didn't like getting my 50 KC for the head. It was super painful. I used the blowpipe.
For now,
with the lance, Dragon Hunter lance, it feels pretty chill. I know I'm just early stages, so it's not super annoying yet, but it's not too bad to farm. It gives a lot of good supplies, so I figured I may as well just use Dragon.
You're not 99 prayer, are you?
No, I have 90 banked currently, so long way to go. So it definitely helps.
Yeah, Vortev can help with that, yeah, for sure.
And it also like passively will get me Dragon Dart tips, which I'll use in Inferno eventually, I'm sure. So
True.
looking forward to that. So that's been kind of my week. I hit 200 KC at Bandos. I got Tacits, if you remember, like in November on like my very first task there, and then I never went back. And then last night I got Boots at like 200 KC. So nothing yet, but pretty good. They're a clue step item, and that's basically it. So I wasn't sad to see them, but I'd love to get the hilt, and then I can start doing Corporeal Beast. Try and get myself a spirit shield of some kind. That's not something I would grind, but that'd be a nice thing to just passively do, since soloing Corp is very chill. It's slow, but at least it's kind of chill. You can just relax and send it.
Is it enjoyable? I think I've done maybe like, I don't know if I've ever done a solo.
I've done 50 KC on my main. I did 50 solo KC on my main, and it was fine. I didn't hate it.
Isn't it like 15 minutes a kill?
Oh yeah, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Slow process, but hey.
Yeah, it's slow, but it'll be good. So that's what I'm looking forward to, getting the health, and then I'll be able to send some of that. I have sent a couple chambers, maybe 10, but after having 5 arcanes in a row, it's really demotivating to go back there. And then seeing people get drops with like 20k points it's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of tough.
It's hard to stomach.
The real answer is for me to just learn solos and then not go with teams anymore, but that's not very fun.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, going with teams will probably still be better personal points per hour. Like if you're an Iron Man, you're just like focusing on your own items. Don't think about anyone else's items. Someone pulls a T-bow, that's fine. That's not gonna. And you know this, Heartless, obviously, but this is just.
I know that, yeah, but there's still like a psychological effect of that at the same time. Yeah. Like it's very hard to remove my emotions from raiding.
If you're going for process over results, I'm pretty sure you'll probably get more points +1 with some friends or something.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to send with friends when I can, and then done a couple We Do raids as well, which can be hit and miss. You know.
So you mentioned doing bandos, and you said it was easy to.
I guess I didn't really talk about my method.
Well, and you also mentioned that it being like easy to find a world. So just because it's instanced for Iron Men, it's still only one per world, right?
Yeah, so basically what happens is everyone shares everything. We can see the normal players. So you get your KC with everyone, and then you walk over. And normal accounts won't see this, but Irons will see a brazier there.
Right.
And it will be lit if there's someone inside the room. And it will be extinguished if there's no one inside the room.
That's cool, yeah.
So then once you click on the door, you'll go into an instance, and Grador will always spawn in his normal spot and walk towards you. And there's basically 3 methods of doing bandos. There's melee, which is not, I think it's the worst, because you can only get like, it's very RNG based because he hits you so much. If he hits you with a lot of range, you just run out of food very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get like 2 to maybe 5 KC trips with that. There's mage, which is good, but I haven't mastered it yet, even though I have quite good gear for it. You basically freeze the minion, and then just attack him with Sanguinesti or whatever trident you have.
Okay.
But the freezes are really inconsistent, and if you miss a bunch in a row, I feel it gets very sketchy.
True.
So what I've chosen for is to go for the 6-0. So basically you hit him 6 times, and he hits you 0 times range method. And I'm getting pretty good at it now that I've got a lot of experience. I'd say the first 100 KC were super sketchy, but it's pretty clean now.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I'm getting about 10 KC trips solo, and it's looking like around 20 KC per hour if I'm playing efficiently. Maybe like 15 if I'm taking my time.
Okay, so that's
not bad at all.
And what's the drop rate on a bando's hilt?
The hilt is 1 in 500, but each
500.
piece, so the boots, the chassis, and the chest plate are all 1 in 380, I think, something like that, just under 400.
Isn't it 1 in 256?
It's 1 in like 380 something. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, I would say roughly 1 in 400. And then there's 3 of them, so 1 in like 128-ish. So not too bad. It's a pretty fun method to learn. And I died a bunch at the beginning, but sometimes you just get hit for 50 or 60.
Yeah, it's a part of like the growing pains of many bosses.
Yeah. If you misclick once, you definitely you plank for sure. But you can get into a rhythm, and then it's pretty chill.
So I had a question in regards to like Iron Men getting their God Sword. So let's create this hypothetical. Let's say you have every single God Wars item. You have all the hilts, but you have no God God Sword shards, I think they're called. You need 3 of them, right? You need 3 shards, and then you need the hilt. How would you go about grinding out those shards? Since I believe they drop from more than just the boss, right? The minions drop them too?
Should be Ziliana, right?
It should be, but there's a more likely scenario that happens. I mean, if you have all the God Wars dungeon items, you're going to have all the shards. Let's say you have 1 hilt, and you really want to finish that blade. Ziliana should be the answer to that question, because it's theoretically the most kills per hour. But I actually think that Bandos might be an acceptable alternative if you're missing any pieces from that, because with instancing now, I'm getting almost 20 kills an hour. And if you remember when I was doing Ziliana with an ACB pretty good gear, I was only getting maybe 17 kills per hour. So they're very comparable at this point.
Okay.
So I would say either one of those would be your option. Pre-instancing, Ziliana 100%.
Cool.
And Zammy isn't even a question. You just get your spear and you get out.
It's possible.
It can be really, really punishing. It's very RNG heavy with this.
I guess Gwardor, if you're comfortable, Gwardor has the added benefit of like not needing any ecumenical keys. You can just go and kill 40 goblins. So your effective kills per hour will probably be higher. If
you asked me that question right now, I would say Grador. Even if I had all the items, I would probably just grind him because it's... But to be fair, Ziliana is way more chill. You don't have to be tick perfect. You can like really linger in the corners and there's so much room because she's such a tiny character model and the room is bigger. So, I don't know. Both are good options. Basically, in real life, my kitten got neutered, so took a couple of days off work to take care of him. He was super drunk the first day he came back. He couldn't walk straight. He
was off the catnip.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But yeah, that's basically been it. What about you, Dills? What have you been up to?
It's short. I'll keep it short and sweet for the most part because my grinds are kind of all over the place. I go from like AFK fishing while I'm at work to rune crafting, sometimes through agility. They're all over the place. So I won't go too much in detail. But there's one thing that I tried that was surprising. It was more. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it than I thought I would. And that was Mahogany Homes. I don't know if you want to call it like it's not a mini game, but it's how would you describe Mahogany Homes? It's like it's an alternative way to train construction, but you get little construction contracts where you go repair somebody's house somewhere in RuneScape. There's like a set number of like 9 or 12 locations, but you just go repair them, and then you get some experience from that, and then you also get points that you can turn in for a few different rewards. So I've been kind of training construction on and off just because it's fast experience if you do it the traditional way, which is like oak doors. I mean, that's how I always have done it. I know there's the some people do the cape rack or like mahogany tables, I think, are some of the other ways of training. But anyways, I always did the oak doors and all that stuff. But I want to get it high enough so that I can make the Nexus portal, like unlock the unlimited one. I want to be able to combine my spirit tree with the fairy ring. I don't want to have to boost because I've had a bad experience with doing that. So I just want to be able to get the levels and boom, that's it. So yeah, I was doing the oak doors, and while it's really fast experience, it's just it's boring. I spend like 15-20 minutes in there, and then I'm like, yeah, it felt like it's been an hour, so then I end up wanting to do something different. So I tried Mahogany Homes, and it was a lot more engaging. I found it a lot more fun. It's definitely a slower experience. Like I'm getting, well, it's not fair to say how much I'm getting. So I'm getting like 100K an hour, which is 3 times less than I would at Oak Doors. But the wiki says you should be getting 160 to 190, and then you can unlock a plank bag, which you can store more planks in it, which will extend. It'll extend how long you can keep doing Mahogany Homes before banking, which will increase your experience to like 250K an hour. I'm just very inefficient, so mine are a lot less. You get points for it as well that you can unlock the plank bag. Then they have like a construction outfit. I forget what it's called, but it's kind of like the angler's outfit or the lumberjack outfit, and it'll increase your experience you get by like, what is it, 2.5% when you have the full set?
I think it's 2. Yeah.
Do you guys know?
It's 2.5, yeah. They're all 2.5 as far as I know.
So generally, at least from when I used to look up if it's worth getting these outfits, it's like typically it's not. If you're just going for 99, it becomes worth it if you're going for like 200 mil. And And this is just because how long it takes to grind out the outfit. If you took all that time and spent it doing something else, like just training it, the amount of hours it takes to get to 99 will be less. But that being said, I really like getting rewarded for training. And I like getting rewarded more than just experience. So the points are cool. And getting that outfit would be neat just because you can now put it in the collection log. And I like unlocking stuff. And when I play... when I play my PlayStation 4, like whenever I play any like RPG game, I kind of like to try to complete everything. So I always try to get all the quests done or get all the unique items that I can. So that's nice to just fill out the collection log and fill out your costume room. But they also offer like a Hasidious wall color, and I don't know if I like it, to be honest, but I like the idea. I like it as an option. It's a lot of points. It's like 2,000 points. And
for me, the wall kit is, I think you get 20 points an hour, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like, is that 100 hours? Wait, that can't be right.
No, you get 5 points per task, and a task takes no more than 5 minutes. It should take much less. Maybe for me, it'll take 5 minutes because I'm just slow at everything.
Yeah. I remember like getting an estimate when Mahogany Homes came out and we covered them. I think it's like 50 points an hour maybe or something.
Yeah, that probably seems more reasonable.
That's still a 40-hour grind though.
Oh, see, that's long. So anyways, if we ignore the actual hour grind part, yeah, it's rough, but it is, I did enjoy it more than the typical construction way of training. So I'm going to try to do that to see, at some point. We'll see how far I get before I get burnt out. Because if you're going to get the Hasidious wall color, you're probably going to get the plank bag. You get an equipable saw. You get the builder's outfit. You probably get those first, which is adding an extra at least 1,000 points to your grind. But that being said, I've always had the fantasy of just having an awesome player like POH, an awesome home that's like decked out to the nines, that you could just have the dopest house parties. I think it comes back, my nostalgia is kicking in from like the 2006 era, whenever it was released, when house parties were just like the thing to do, right? You go to someone's house party and like, holy crap, they have royal thrones. Not just that, they got a trapdoor. They're going to send you into the dungeon. And what's going on down here?
I remember those. Yeah, I remember you'd like approach the throne and they
and it was like
they'd set the trap on you.
And they could turn on PvP in the dungeon, so people could kill each other, I think. And then you'd have like steel dragons down there, or you'd have like a lesser demon, or maybe a hellhound and skeletons. You could have NPCs that would then also attack you. Anyways, I've always like, I'd love to get to that point where my house is like, people are talking about me all across Guild. You got to go to Dill's POH. Have you seen it? Dude's got steel dragons in the basement,
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but...
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm like begging people, and they're like, do you have a gilded altar? It's like, well, no, I don't have a gilded altar. And like, why the hell am I coming into your house then?
Have I ever talked about like how when I was a kid playing old school, like I would go to these like POHs that were like advertised on the forums as hotels and restaurants, and you could just like chill. You'd like pay $5,000 and you get your own like executive suite, which is just like a bedroom. And then like you can type in the CC like room service or something.
No way.
And someone would come in and be like, oh, this is room service. It was like some pretty lame kid shit, but I actually really enjoyed it because it was a pretty chill thing to do on like Saturday mornings after finishing homework or something. So it was pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. You like you're role playing a micro game inside of another game.
Exactly. And that's like community based role playing, where it's like it is a game within a game, but it's only because the power of the community role playing makes it a game, which is kind of like really cool to see.
Yeah, exactly. Have you guys ever watched that? I don't know if they're still like still trending as much, but there was on Twitch, a bunch of streamers were playing Grand Theft GTA RPG servers. Oh yeah,
roleplay GTA servers are amazing. I would play them last year for a little bit, or like late 2019, where you'd just be able to like roleplay different. Everybody was pretty much either a cop or a criminal by the end of the day, but like you could still roleplay some cool ass stuff. I remember seeing a clip where some police officer like got his car jacked by a criminal, and he had to be like completely in character while trying not to crack up because they like snuck up behind him. It was pretty fun. I'll have to like dig it up.
Heartless, have you ever seen any of these?
I've seen streamers play those servers, yeah, but I've never touched it myself.
Some of them are strict, where like you're not allowed to break character. You know?
Yeah, that's fair. It's crazy though. It's funny to watch.
Yeah, it is, and especially with streamers that are probably like just better at it, I guess. And then I used to play Arma 3, which is I don't even know how you would describe it, but it's like a military sim. But they have like all these mods where you can play it. And then they had one called Atlas World, which is the same thing. It was very RPG heavy, and I remember getting pulled over by cops, quote unquote cops. They're just like, but they had a whole process. You had to get they had a chief of police that you would get interviewed by if you wanted to be a cop. Oh man, and there's so that stuff's kind of fun. But I'd never seen that in RuneScape. That's hilarious that was a thing. Anyways, but to wrap up my updates, Mahogany Homes, 2 thumbs up. Well, we got some doozy of an updates to talk about. Should we just hop right into it?
Yeah, let's do it up.
Let's do it.
Alrighty, let's start off light before we get into the heavy hitters. We're gonna talk about Puro improvements and Barbarian Assault changes, and they also squeezed in some Soul Wars changes. So first things first is Puro. Are you guys big fans of the Puro minigame?
No, it's terrible.
Actually, yeah, you think so?
I got 83 Hunter and went to get my glories there. Worst decision ever. Just Venezuelans sniping them left and right.
Oh no.
Oh, it was one of the most painful experiences I've ever had playing this game.
Oh, that's funny.
Was not good.
Yeah, Puro is a minigame, although it's one of the less fun-based mini games, I guess. You just go into this little wheat field basically, and you catch imps, and you will get rewards. Well, the imps give you rewards anyways, so it's just like a centralized location of a bunch of imps. So they made some improvements, and here they are. So there are some new impling spawns around Gielinor, although implings do not spawn any faster. So this just, I guess, gives a bit more diversity for when you're going to bump into them. I guess for people hunting them, at least, it might be a little bit harder to narrow in where they're going to spawn since there's more locations, but whatever. Crop circles may now appear in 10 new locations, including new wheat fields and existing fields that were previously crop circle free. You may find crop circles appearing south of Taverley, Mossley Harmless, Harmony, Hosidius, the Farming Guild, Gwyneth, Gnome Stronghold, Catherby, Brimhaven, and south of Kingstown. Enter these crop circles to gain the Farmer's Affinity bonus and go to the Puro minigame. So the Farmer's Affinity bonus is you only gain this when you travel through one of the overworld crop fields. Before this, you had to go to Xanaris to go into the Puro. So now there's much more different portals to it, I suppose. So when you do this, players now receive a 30-minute buff, allowing them to push through the wheat faster. So this would increase your imp catching times. Players can now toggle whether or not they gain experience from the minigame. You must chat to Elnock about the wheat to toggle this option. Players can now store butterfly nets, imp repellent, and up to 1,000 jars with Elnock. He also has a quick withdraw option, letting you grab the necessary equipment in one move. And finally, Elnock is now available to trade a small number of jars. They're around 2,000 GP each, and they have a daily purchase limit of 10. So yeah, you might have. I know I randomly saw these portals around Gielinor, and it was kind of strange, but they have the teleports you just randomly bump into. But the whether or not the portal is open is kind of random, and it changes every 30 minutes. So I wonder. I wonder if there's a CC around where people are scouting which portal is open, so that people can gain the Farmer's Affinity bonus. Or I wonder if it's even the meta to get the Farmer's Affinity.
It can't be worth it.
No, you don't think so?
No, not really. It just can't be worth it.
I could only see it. So like what some people do, I see those eclectic imps, and I think they're very heavily farmed because of the medium clues they give as a reward. So people buy it, like myself, when they're grinding out Ranger boot, whatever the hell they're grinding out. But what they'll do is they'll stand in the eclectic spawn location, and they basically just spam click, and they catch the imp as soon as it spawns every, 10 seconds?
That's me. I've caught 15,000 of those.
Really?
Something, I don't know how it is. I've caught like 10,000 probably. But yeah, that's how you get medium clues. But the thing is, even with that method, I just bank them all. Or even if you're not banking, it's not worth being able to push through the wheat because you just pick up an inventory, go and do a few clues, then come back for more.
Yeah.
So if you're grinding them that way, it's not worth the time. You'd rather spend the time cutting through the wheat than looking for a crop field to get into the area.
I wonder if the Farmer's Affinity is good for like an Iron Man who might be trying to get a glory through a Dragon Impling.
Sure, yeah, if that was the case, it might be worth it. But overall, calling this a minigame is a disgrace.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not a game. It's like it's
an
like
exercise in futility.
Yeah, it's like hell, the hell of RuneScape. It's so bad down there, and the only people you ever see is Iron Men farming medium clues, or Venezuelans training hunter, or Venezuelans getting dragon imps. I've never seen a normal account down there.
We should move Motherlode Mine to Puro so Heartless and I can have a place that we mutually want to nuke the shit out of and just delete from the game.
Is Motherlode Mine considered a minigame?
Motherlode Mine is considered... Okay, I'm not even going to be that dark on the show. Just let's move on.
Yeah, let's get out of here.
It was a nice day. Then we brought up Motherlode Mine, and now my day's slowly getting ruined. So
yeah, we're not even at the juicy stuff yet. So okay.
Yep, poor sucks.
Okay, that's fair. But you know what, guys? Keep grinding it because I need those eclectic imps. So I want to keep those prices down low. Next is Barbarian Assault. So when we're talking about fun minigames, oh boy, here comes the next one.
Excuse you, I will not tolerate any Barbarian Assault slander.
Yeah, dude, it's actually a fun minigame. What are you talking about, Dills?
Okay, it's not bad unless you're trying to do like a pug or like doing it with randoms, then you're really throwing the die.
When you're dealing with people that are rocking like dragon swords and they've got like a granite plate body and rune boots and a D-med on and a power Ami, you're like, oh, this isn't going to be fun. That's my attacker? Are we sure? That's the kind of stuff you'll see when you're getting your first torso by yourself. But with a group of people, it's really enjoyable.
It is good when you have a fast, efficient team. You don't have to worry about getting to like number 5 and then somebody go, oh, I got my torso. Bye-bye. And they leave at round 5 and you're like, oh my, damn it. And then if you're doing it with people like from a CC or Discord, maybe you're on voice chat, so you can be like, dude, shout out my commands.
Yeah, exactly. Call for me, asshole.
So anyways, it's a minigame that your experience is definitely directly affected by who you're playing with. So they did some poll changes plus more. So as requested, machines are now streamlined and players can click out of the process. I don't even know what that means.
It means like when you go to start each wave, you know how like every player except for the collector like grabs their arrows or grabs their food or grabs their like healing stuff or whatever.
Yeah, it's from like a vending machine. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, once you get them, you're locked into the animation, and now you can actually click out of the animation early. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, cool. The player should be able to call while interacting with the machine. So I guess as you mentioned, you're stuck in the animation. You can't call from the horn. You have to wait till you're done, which means if you're in the middle, it's a few seconds that your partner might not be able to do their job. Repairing traps is now quicker. That's good because defender is the worst role. The defender machine gives the defender a hammer. Oh, that's awesome. Save you some run energy from having to run and grab a hammer.
This actually changes the meta a lot, I'm pretty sure, for speeds.
Oh, seriously, eh?
Not like game changing, but the moment you start any wave as a defender, there's like 3 places you have to go to, dropping food along the way just so you can pick up a hammer. And on later waves, you also have to pick up the logs on the way. So I'm not sure how this is actually going to affect speed. Like I haven't checked any new speedrun guides, but maybe this changes the way you like drop your food to start the wave. Maybe finish it faster.
Interesting. So I wonder if there's a very, very, very small group of players who are just pissed at this change. They're like, everyone's bitching about the blowpipe nerf. This right here is my blowpipe nerf.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So along with that, they brought some more changes. So penance kill counters are now updated more predictably in Barbarian Assault waves. Eggs have been remodeled so that they are colorblind friendly. They should just have a colorblind option in general, but I guess that takes a lot of work. But accessibility is a big thing in for games.
There are colorblind options on RuneLite, by the way, but they look terrible.
True. Yeah. You know what though? There's so many things on RuneLite. You got to bring it into the base game. I don't know what's going. Like tile markers. Let me be able to do my tile markers on mobile. That's such a game changer. In a game where every click is you need to be so precise sometimes. Anywho, fake experience drops have been added since you don't actually get experience in the game. So that's good if you are to know exactly how hard you're hitting as an attacker. And we've added flashing calls to let you know when a call is changing. So let's move on to Soul Wars. So they made some changes in hopes of making the game have a healthier longevity, I suppose. The blue waiting area has been changed into the Soul Wars waiting area. And when all players looking to join a game, they are all put into the same waiting area. When a game starts, players are automatically assigned to a team. They use combat levels as a way to even out the two teams. And the unnecessary green portal is removed.
It basically, so they had I'm pretty sure they had the blue and the red portals, and we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but instead they removed the neutral green portal, which is like the green portal from Castle Wars. They put everyone in a general lobby area, and then there's another one that's exclusively for the new clan v clan mode that's coming.
Yeah.
Right now, in 10 seconds when you read it out.
All right, let's do it. The red waiting area has been reworked into a clan waiting area. This area can be used on any world, but the player must still meet their Soul Wars requirement of total level, combat level, tutorial completion, and membership. Within the waiting area, clan members can challenge each other to Soul Wars games. Only clan members ranked captain and above can issue and accept a challenge. Challenges can be issued to members of the same clan. Once issued, the challenge will show up in the chat box and players must click to accept. They're basically bringing in clan battles into Soul Wars. I guess it'll make it easier for those underground competitive scenes that kind of happen with usually not too many players that get involved, but still, there's a handful, right? Castle Wars has their own competitive scene there. Remember way back, I tried to just see what was going on, get involved a little bit just to get the inside scoop. So I found a Discord for it. But man, is it ever cryptic to become a competitive player. They have a Discord when you get sent to another Discord to do tournaments. It was strange when I did it a couple years ago. And also for the clan battles in Soul Wars, you can still receive Zeal, but you get it at 1/3 of the usual rate. And that's basically it. That's all the noticeable stuff there. So that happened. Quick little gripe about Soul Wars. First off, they have the portal in Edgeville, and it looks silly. It's kind of just at the Edgeville dungeon ruins. It's just randomly placed there. It doesn't really seem to me, it doesn't fit. It just seemed like we need to put it somewhere. Let's put it there.
Yeah.
I don't know why they wouldn't put it in the Ferox Enclave, in the wilderness where Last Man Standing. I'm surprised that they don't at least bring this for fun for non-members. They have it for Castle Wars, even though I don't think Castle Wars got too popular, and a lot of and I think it died pretty quickly on free to play because, a bunch of max levels went over there and were just tearing shit up. It's kind of a trend that happens with minigames. But anyways, let's talk about this big one because it's been all the rage for the past couple days. The community they've been going crazy.
Oh, here we go.
I'm pretty pumped. This is I never thought this would ever happen. And not only is it happening, they're doing it to so many items that I was that's okay. Items that have been in the game for the dawn of RuneScape. So anyways, here we go. Let me read the first little blurb. So they're doing a huge equipment rebalancing. A lot of nerfs coming to a lot of different items. And some buffs actually, but people don't care about the buffs as much because they're less noticeable. So, all right, here we go. Old School will be 8 years old soon. Can you believe it? I'm quite surprised, to be honest, but it's astonishing how much combat has developed over the years. Regular updates have introduced all sorts of new items to the scuffle, but to avoid the dreaded power creep, we've generally leaned towards offering niche items as rewards rather than introducing more powerful weaponry. That being said, it's becoming more difficult to balance new rewards around existing content without trivializing old challenges. A lot of existing item requirements don't reflect their strength, a fact that the community has been discussing for some years now. We hear you, and we've been working on a proposal that we think will benefit the game's long-term health. With combat achievements around the corner, it feels like the perfect moment to bring this project forward. Not only did they say it's the perfect moment, they also said these changes will happen before the combat achievements. So basically, the combat achievements have been worked around these changes, or they've seen that it needs to happen. So anyways, let me continue. We recently ran a survey tackling this issue, and you said yes. So we're ready to work with you on the exact changes we'll be making. We appreciate these alterations will impact many players, and certain account builds will be more negatively affected than others, but the long-term health of the game must be our focus. We want to give you the opportunity to have your say, so please take the time to read through all the changes and provide feedback using the link at the bottom of this blog. All right, so what did the survey said? Did you guys do this survey? I didn't do this survey.
I've done a couple surveys now. I can't remember if this is the one I participated in. I remember I did one about HD graphics coming into the game, so fingers crossed for that. So that's a long way to say I can't remember.
Heartless, were you part of this survey at all?
No, I don't remember doing it.
Yeah, me neither. I don't remember. Yeah, anyways. I must have missed it. So this is what the survey said. They got over 10,000 responses, and they tackled these next topics, I guess. So over half of those surveyed stated power creep is something they think about and felt that power creep existed within old school RuneScape. What is power creep? It's something that I think a lot of MMOs have to try to avoid because it's just the way long-lasting MMORPGs are. So what they mean is that with old school RuneScape, as time goes on, they need to bring in new weapons, which means, you know, the damage output of the max character is going to continue to increase. At some point, it's going to be so strong that what do? Do you just keep increasing how much damage somebody can output? Because that's also going to make Bandos, God Wars, all of that. It's going to be not just much easier to do, but it'll just be kind of a joke for endgame players. They'll be able to go in no problem and just destroy stuff. So you need to bring in more powerful weapons because it's what people get motivated for, and people get excited for new powerful weapons, but they have to do it in a way that's not going to like introduce some weapon that now, okay, you can basically one hit, you know, at some point down the road. You don't ever want to be able to one hit these bosses or like just be able to go in and fuck them up ridiculously, right? And this is a problem that many MMOs have, and a lot of MMORPGs have. They tackle this issue in different ways. So we'll get into that afterwards. So a lot of players are worried about power creep coming into the game. So next, most players felt that power creep isn't currently a major problem in old school RuneScape, at least for now. However, over half of those surveyed were worried about the long-term health of old school because of power creep. Almost all of those surveyed would like to see undesirable equipment improved to encourage variety. And almost half of those surveyed would not like to see powerful equipment weakened. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on to what items they're looking at. Okay. So it says shed no tears. That's their the way they title it. Tears as in TIERS, not TEARS. So some of the most powerful weapons in old school have requirements much lower than the perceived or actual strength. This has little room for new weapons to be introduced without causing power creep. And now many players feel confused about how strong items actually are. For example, if you look at Bandos, it requires 65 defense. You look at Barrow's item, it requires 70 defense. A new player is going to look at Barrows and be like, well, that's the stronger piece of gear. When in reality, we all know Bandos does outperform Barrows in most cases.
Yeah.
So it's not the most intuitive for players. They have to kind of have this insider knowledge. We don't have many options when it comes to equipment tiers in old school, so we'd like to simply adjust the requirements of certain items to better match their stats and helping to expose gaps for us to add new snazzy items. So basically they want someone to they want to be able to open up the attack skill guide that you can do in game, look at the weapons, and they can see, okay, steel requires 5 attack, mithril requires 20. Mithril's therefore stronger, right? It's very obvious. They kind of want to avoid something where, like, you look at bronze and you look at iron. They both require 1 attack. Iron is just stronger. Maybe a bad example to use, but like as you go down into like the more unique weapons where you have like the scythe and the elder maul and you have like the Garazi rapier and then you have the whip, you want to be able to know that a 70 attack weapon is not as strong as a 75 attack weapon. And if you do look at it, and the problem that I've complained about a few times is that you look at the tiers and they keep going and then they just hit 75 and then you have all of these random items that are just tier 75. Some are just obviously stronger than others, but they're still requiring the same 75 attack. So the first one they're going to change, they want to change, is the Garazi rapier. Currently has 75 attack and they want to change that to 80 attack. They want to do the same to Blade of Saildor and the Inquisitor's Mace. They also want to move Trident of the Swamps from 75 magic to 78 magic, while moving the Sanguinesti Staff from 75 magic to 82 magic. The Kodai Wand, they want to move from 75 magic to 80 magic. Nightmare Staff, just the base Nightmare Staff, from 65 magic to 72 magic. And then when you equip the orb to that Nightmare Staff, it goes from 75 magic to 82 magic. The Dragon Hunter crossbow currently needs 65 range. They want to move to 70. Dragon Hunter lance currently at 70 attack. They want to move to 78 attack. And then the Scythe of Vitur, 75 attack to 85 attack. What do you guys think? Makes sense?
For like it's fine. Yeah, this probably should have been happening from the beginning. Besides affecting like random pure accounts, I don't see this being that big of a change.
Yes.
It's something that probably should have been in the game for a long time, and it doesn't really affect the game too much, in my opinion, outside of those niche accounts.
It's just a symbolic thing. Realistically, like if you have a scythe, you definitely, and you're not like a restricted account, like a pure or something, you're definitely going to have 85 attack by that point. If you're using a lance, you're going to have 78 attack instead of 70.
But once again, like even for pures, like it's just going to shift their meta a little bit. Like this affects all of them, so you have to remember that it's not just affecting your 75 attack account. You know?
Yeah, because there are people who make PKing accounts where they cap it at 75 attack. I believe God swords are 75 attack.
They
right?
are. Yeah, they are.
So
they are.
Maybe somebody's going to keep it at 75 so they can still use the Armadillo God sword. It's a very strong PvP weapon, and they could at that, but if they kept it at 75, they could still use the Blade of Saildor. They could still use the Garazi rapier. Now that I guess they're stuck with the tentacle whip. And if you really break down the numbers, the Garazi rapier and the Blade of Saildor, maybe the Inquisitor's Mace, I'm not too sure about that one, but they are stronger than the tentacle whip.
They can't use
pures don't use tent whips, because it only trains can't train strength. So yeah, I don't know. It's a little weird for those accounts, but besides that, this is pretty negligible and a good change, I would say.
Yeah, I agree that it needs to happen, just because the problem with power creep as well is that do you just keep every item in 75, or when you bring an item to 80, people are going to expect it to be stronger than tier 75 items. So them breaking it up does make it a little bit easier. Okay, let's move to nerfing the nerfable. That's their title there. So this is, oh boy, here we go. So let's start with a Nata's Knot face guard. So they have a Nata's Knot helmet. They brought out a jaw that you get from the Basilisk Knights. You can attach it to the face guard, and it made it stronger. So they say here, simply put, the face guard is a little too powerful considering the level at which it is rewarded. And what they mean is the Basilisk Knights just take level 60 Slayer to fight, which is kind of strange for maybe a best in slot attachment. So what they want to do is they want to bring the strength bonus from the helmet from 6, and they want to bring it down to 5.
So that's in line with the Serp Helm for those of you who don't know. Serp Helm is also +5 strength.
I've seen a lot of people complain about this, and I have to be honest, I don't agree with their complaints at all, because I remember talking about the face guard when it first came out. The face guard was really broken, and it wasn't just the +1 strength bonus. And here's why, like, it should be in line with the Serp Helm. When you use a face guard, you remove all the negative bonuses that the Serp Helm gives you. The face guard has no negative bonuses, so you can camp it as a hybrid helm. You don't have to take it off, or you don't have to switch it out like you do with the Serp Helm. Also, you don't use any charges to charge it like you do with the face guard. So actually, like, if you use it long enough, will cost you less than a Serp in the long run. So
Yeah.
for it to do that, I believe it also gives a prayer bonus, if I'm not mistaken. But for it to do that, set aside for the prayer bonus for now. If it is 3, then that's already another benefit. But for it to do that, of like being not a degradable or not a chargeable item and not having negative bonuses, already makes it a lot more viable than the Serp Helm. And yeah, I can say that the Serp Helm like helps you venom targets and like gives you poison protection, but is that really like a big jump when you consider a lot of the uses for a Serp Helm where the venom isn't that big of a deal and poison protection isn't that crazy either? Like, it'll like the face guard just becomes like a viable alternative, which, considering it comes from a very mid-game level boss, kind of makes sense.
So I completely agree with you, Magpies. At first I was upset about this, and now I think that was my bias because I have a Serp Helm and spent like hours and hours getting one. But if I put that aside and actually think about it, it still remains a best in slot helmet after this nerf.
So you're talking about the face guard or the Serp helmet?
The face guard.
Okay.
Remains best in slot because it's tied with the Serp, and as Magpie says, it has no upkeep cost and it has no negative bonuses, so it's the best tribrid helm still for Chambers of Xeric. However, the other option would be that Basilisk Knights, I don't know if you've ever killed them, they are not a 60 Slayer monster. They should not be at 60 Slayer. They're way harder than basically any Slayer monster in the game. They're absolutely devastating to kill. They destroy your prayer potions. They take forever to kill with range or melee. There's just no way they should be at that Slayer level. They should realistically be at 90. They should be swapped with Dark Beasts, in my opinion.
Well, the good news is they're going to actually change the mechanics of basilisks.
Sure.
So
to make them easier, right? So they're going to make the jaw cheaper by doing so.
Yes.
And that's one of the options as well. And that's I'm okay with it because the helmet sort of stays in. There's not really any reason for like a best in slot to be attached to a quest as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's quite easy and has such a low Slayer requirement.
It says here,
Yeah, the low Slayer requirement is like the strange part.
It's like a 20 mil helm. It used to be 30. It used to be 40 when it first came out. So
it says here the special attack will be removed from the base Basilisk Knights, but will remain on the Basilisk Sentinel, which is the superior version, and the defensive stats will be reduced.
okay, so you're going to get a lot of DPS. Those of you who don't know, it'll freeze you in stone, and it's super annoying. You have to click like 5 times or have auto retaliate on with range.
Yeah, but they're going to change that so that you can't break it with auto retaliate as well for the superiors who still have the special.
Well, and that's fair because you don't see them very often. So, yep, good change overall. I like this one.
I agree. I'm surprised that they're keeping it at 60 attack or 60 Slayer because that's still strange to look at.
I think with all these changes, and it took me a minute to realize, you really have to take a step back and just think about overall, not think about you personally and how it affects you. Just think about the game.
I think that's the and we'll see it when we maybe get down to some of the other ones where a lot of players are very upset about is nobody likes to be weaker than they used to be. And
I know, and we should acknowledge our bias too as all like late game players with either a lot of banks or a lot of items.
I only have one bank.
What a lot of money is what I'm saying. Like, these changes overall will affect us less than other players, but still, it's just important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's is removing your personal wants because we all want to be super strong and just shred everything. Is that good for the game though? That's the big question. So moving on to the next one. It's the Twisted Bow. And they say generally they're pretty happy at where the Twisted Bow sits. They're very strong with high magic monsters. But they're not. But this also means it isn't the best option for every monster you encounter, making it easier for us to balance new challenges around it. Mainly because the passive with the Twisted Bow is they deal more damage to monsters with a higher magic attack. So that's easy to just make sure a monster doesn't have a high magic attack if they don't want the Twisted Bow to be really good. So yeah, they'll be moving that from level 75 range to 85 range. And the only change they want to do is they want to remove the Twisted Bow. They want to remove the prayer bonus that's attached to the Twisted Bow. Right now it gives +4. They want it to give 0. Magpie, you're our resident Twisted Bow wielder, right? What do you think?
Yeah, seems fine. Like, prayer bonus should not have been on it, in my opinion. That's already game breaking.
+4 as well. +4 is wild. Do you think they should have actually nerfed the Twisted Bow, Magpies? Being honest with yourself.
No, probably not. Because it's actually been really easy to balance. We've seen them like be able to balance the Twisted Bow around, balance monsters around the Twisted Bow really easily, just by like.
So where it's good, it's the best, but where it's not good, it's useless. Like.
Yeah, pretty much. Like
Tob
like
could
it's
be
still
a good example. Like it's not useless at Tob, but it's not really that you don't use it.
You have to also remember that a lot of the GP per hour from Chambers of Zarek, which is still like an early late game raid, is tied with the T-Bow's value. So if you nerf the T-Bow, you're actually going to make Chambers of Zarek near useless for a lot of players who are starting to grind it out. Like it'd still be good money and really enjoyable, but the T-Bow is what like single-handedly props up the T-Bow and like Ancestral and Claws maybe are what prop up the profits of Chambers of Zarek. So the more you nerf the T-Bow, the
Dragon Hunter crossbow too. Yeah.
Worse off that one lucky team of like 3 learners who get a T-Bow at 10 KC become.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Makes sense. From a lore's perspective, it's strange that because with Zarek being tied to the Dark Altar, I'm pretty sure the Dark Altar is not like a positive thing for like quote unquote prayer. Anything like I know with I don't know if it's the Dark Altar, but when you're doing rune crafting, it drains your prayer. So, anyways, it's strange that something's like a very like a holy item per se with having prayer.
Well, this isn't from the Zarek himself. Zarek was going, if you want like the lore, Zarek was going into the chambers to find the magic of.
Isn't it the spine of Olm or something?
It's a string plucked from his like hair or something, I think is what makes
cool.
it. So it's based on Olm. Olm isn't necessarily like a prayer heavy character, so
I might be getting this wrong. It's been a while since I've actually looked into the lore of that stuff, but Chambers of Zarek was basically him trying to find his way into the Dark Altar.
He was trying to find,
or like the crystals.
Yeah, he was trying to
tied to the Dark
like,
Altar.
Power up the Dark Altar with the power of the crystals from the chambers, which, if I'm not mistaken, are directly tied to like Olm's own power. And so, the T-Bow being like taken from one of Olm's body part, whether that's like his hair, his spine, his pubes, I don't know, but it'll still be relevant to Olm more so than Zarek.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Anywho, I guess we can move on from that. Next one. This is an interesting one. Dragonhide armor, aka black dragonhide armor. They say here, black d'hide armor has been notoriously powerful for an incredibly low cost for a long time, like a very long time, going back to like 2004 maybe. It offers a high defense bonus, especially against magic attacks, with negligible negative stats to offset this. The armor generally goes against the combat triangle and doesn't follow the same distributions as similar ranged armor. So they want to address the overall defense bonuses of Dragonhide with a focus on melee defense. So they say this would apply to all tiers of Dragonhide armor, but we're going to use the Black d'hide specifically because that's, most people are going to end up at Black d'hide and then you're not going back to Red d'hide. So
this also affects Blessed d'hide, just for everyone
right
out there. Just a note.
So it looks like they basically want to do on both the Black d'hide body and the Black d'hide chaps, they want to nerf basically 20 defense across the board. Not for range, but everything else, they want to nerf it by 20, it looks like, roughly speaking.
Basically cutting it in half.
Yeah, for melee defenses and...
Even magic, they're shaving a little bit off.
Yeah, magic and range, they're shaving a little bit, but melee defenses are getting basically halved. So, and they say, as the issue with Dragonhide is most prevalent in PvP, focusing these changes on its melee defense capabilities will encourage players to try different armor pieces to make up for their loss in stats, all while having a much lower impact on players focusing on PvM encounters. This naturally balances the combat triangle, as typically higher melee defense items are susceptible to magic attacks. Yeah, what do you think? You got a no from
If you mind if
Heartless?
I jump in? I just don't. So this change particularly, they really. So okay, we're going to talk about the blowpipe in a second, obviously. And there's this like thing me, Raichu, and Weez were talking about. It's basically like a door in the face technique where someone tells you, they say, I'm going to do this, and it's the worst possible scenario. And then they scale it back a little bit so that you have to accept the second option.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're like outraged at the first one, and then there's no way. And then you're like, okay, but they're like, okay, but we need to nerf this. And then you're like, you just have to accept the second option they present you because they're like, we're gonna do it eventually. So, it's a way to like make the player base happy. And I'm pretty sure whether it's intentional or not, I think it is. That's what they're doing, and specifically Black D'Hide and the blowpipe that we'll get to. I think this is like a pretty serious over nerf. I don't think it needs to be touched that much. What do you guys think? Like cutting it in half seems crazy.
It seems like a lot, but I will say,
It's strong for sure. For like a 10k item, it's very, very strong.
That's the one thing.
I do a lot of PvM, and I do a lot of non-PvP stuff in the wilderness. And I mean, Black D'Hide is just what you bring. It's cheap and it's great. You won't catch freezes, and that's the main reason, is to prevent the freezes. That coupled with like a Din's Bulwark, we're gonna talk about that in a bit. Serb Helmet, you can get a setup where you're virtually like I truly feel like virtually unstoppable when I go to do the Chaos Altar. I have been in many situations where somebody's attacking me, and I'll just eat the attacks, and I'm just gonna continue burying my bones because I'd rather get rid of the bones that I have. It's gonna give me better experience rates, and there's a good chance the person's gonna give up and stop attacking. So
I agree it's too strong. It also has higher melee defense stats than Carol's, which is I mean, Carol's is tier 70 and this is tier 40, so it is definitely too strong. But I think cutting it in half is way too much. I don't know if I confirmed this, but I'm pretty sure this brings it in line with the melee defense of Green D'Hide, which seems a little silly.
Well, Green D'Hide is going to be nerfed as well. I think they should have just swapped around the defensive stats of the Black D'Hide, like body and legs, with Carol's. Seems like a really easy workaround.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so buff Carol's melee defense and then nerf, because it's an expensive item that incentivizes Barrows for early game players. I think I agree with you, Magpies, because Carol's defense is not the best, but it's still better than this. This is like a serious over nerf, but most likely they're going to end up on like 75% of this or something.
When we compare it to Armadillo as well, the defense stats are just +1 to +2.
Yep.
At least for the chest.
Oh, I agree.
So Armadillo is only defense wise. It's like not even noticeable. Now you do get more magic defenses, which is good. But the melee is basically on par with the current Black Dragonhide. So
Armadillo is essentially, but even for just the offensive bonuses, it only gives you +7 top and bottom. It's basically the most overpriced item in the game currently, in my opinion. I don't know if Magpies would agree with me.
Yeah, I went on a rant about this like a week or two ago. Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall to bring it in line, it does need to be nerfed, but this is an over nerf. That's my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it is a very interesting one, but this is definitely kind of tied to this balance. So we're gonna go to the next one, which is the Din's Bulwark. If you don't know what the Din's Bulwark is, it's basically a two-handed shield that you get from Chambers of Xeric, and it's meant to be a defensive. You want to call it a weapon? A defensive weapon.
Yeah. It's a door.
Two-handed garage the two-handed garage door.
Yeah, acts as
it looks sweet, dude. It has an eye right in the middle. It's the same door that's at Wintertodt when you go.
Yeah, designed by the same dwarf.
Right.
Yep.
So it's very cool, and it has its uses, and it not in PvP. So it has a lot of defensive bonuses. So just for some context, right now Black D'Hide top has about 50 to 60 in their defenses across the board, whereas a Din's Bulwark has 150, so 3 times as defensive minus it has no magic defense.
Yep.
So
double DFS, I believe.
So it's great to bring into the wilderness, even though it has a perk where it reduces damage by 20%, but in PvP that's not applied. But it's still very strong. So you can, if you're doing chins or if you're doing, I do Venenatus and I always bring one just in case I need to run away. Bust that bad boy out, but it's very strong. It
has 0 magic defense as well, and then I think its range defense is like 200 or something.
145.
It's ridiculous. 145. Okay, so it's basically 150 in everything, and then it's 0 for magic.
Yeah, 0. But they want to change that magic defense from 0 to -25. So they kind of want to make this a. So the big problem when you're doing PVM activities is if you catch a freeze, you're in a really bad spot. If somebody ice barrages you and it hits you, you can't move for, was it 15 seconds?
Yeah.
So about for 15 seconds where you just have to try not to die until that time is up. So now with this shield giving you negative magic defense, it's going to work against that, right? It's going to be great for when somebody tries to range you or they're going to try to melee you, but for maging, it's going to help them. So that's a big one. And they also want to reduce melee defenses by 25%. So they want to scale those back as well. This is a big nerf. A lot of people are upset, but I do think it is too strong because... So a lot of the argument that I've seen people have is that there should be items where PVMers can be pretty tanky in the wilderness to prevent being PK'd. I agree with that. And they also think that if a PKer is wearing, if they have 500k setup, they shouldn't be able to kill you.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing is, I find with the shield is that, and it should be very strong, but I find it's like way too strong, where like, if somebody is still in 500k setup, there should still be a bit of like, okay, if I sit here and tank these hits, like I should probably run away. Like you should never be able to just sit there and tank somebody attacking you. I find that's like, I don't know.
I am totally against this change.
I'm 100% going to disagree with you, Dills.
Oh no.
Yeah, I think little salad boys with their water sticks shouldn't be able to do anything against you with your two-handed shield in the wilderness, and there's no way you can fight back against them. They have 0 risk of dying.
It's
not like you're anti-PKing you.
Let's talk game mechanics for a little bit. So we talked a lot about the wilderness a couple weeks ago, about how PvPers are incentivized to kill for money. Generally, that's how you get like people into the wilderness. When you're somebody with a Din's Bulwark, you bring it into the wilderness to do some kind of skilling activity like, say, training prayer. What you're doing is you're essentially removing all the risk for a PvPer of them possibly getting killed, which means an entire half of their like risk versus reward ratio is essentially nullified. Like they do not have to worry at all about you being able to fight back. In return for that, though, you are acting on the assumption that you are going to be able to tank all but the very strongest of PKers. So what you're doing when you nerf the Din's Bulwark is you're actually giving them a lot more reward for the same amount of minimal risk, where someone who's not risking anything knows that they can just kill you, and they don't have to bring powerful items in the wilderness to do that. On the other hand,
right,
when you have a Din's Bulwark that's actually strong, PvPers, in my opinion, when PvPers log in and they see you with a Din's Bulwark, they should just be like, yeah, this is a waste of time. We're going to like waste our time on this guy. Let's go find another target, which I know is not the reason why people like want, or why Jagex wants people in the wilderness. They don't want skills to just be ignored by PvPers, but I'm pretty sure the point of PvP is player versus player, not player versus someone standing there not giving like a shit about fighting back. And
you should be a preacher, Mike. I agree with 100% with what you're saying right now.
So when you nerf the Din's Bulwark, you're literally just incentivizing people to be even lazier with their PKing and go for the weak targets instead of actually playing PvP the way it's supposed to, and like encouraging battles with other PvPers or other like teams of PKers, which is what the wilderness should be like. Instead, this just incentivizes people to go camp. People training wilderness prayer at the chaos altar,
or people that bring risk to PvP bosses. If you bring a Din's Bulwark and you're at a boss like Callisto or something like that, and you put on the Bulwark, that should be a sign to PvPers. I have something worth protecting because I've brought a big ass shield and I'm gonna tank you down to 30. So you can try and kill me, but you're gonna need to take all your skill to do it. That's what it says to
Yeah.
me. But if you go ahead and put a negative 25 magic bonus on this item, I just removed from the game. It's not even useful anymore.
Yeah. There's no PVM mechanics.
No one
that
would bring it.
Use tanking as like, oh, we need a designated tank with a two-handed shield to like be a meat shield for us. There's no other area in the game where the Din's Bulwark is remotely useful except Turel Slayer, where you just like use the spec and like kill a bunch of penguins all at once. Other than that, literally, the entire point of the Din's Bulwark is to be like, okay, the plus side of it is you are so tanky that you're going to need a really good PKer and really good gear to kill you, and you're able to ignore 80% of the shitters in the wilderness, if not 90%. The minus side of things is that you'll never be able to anti-PK someone, and you're completely denying yourself the opportunity of actually profiting off someone who skulls up on you. That's what the Din's Bulwark risk-reward ratio is supposed to be. Now, the plus side of the Dins is it's going to take a little bit longer to kill you. And the minus side is you're not going to bring anything in to kill them with.
I love the Din's Bulwark, and I think it serves a great place in the game. The fact that it has 0 magic defense means that they still have a chance to catch freezes on you, and then they can use their ability of switching to kill you, and then you can try to tank them. But if you remove that and then gut the melee as well, it's just like, what's the point? Imagine getting this in Chambers in its nerfed proposal state. It'd be like worse than Dragon Harpoon.
Okay, I'm going to step out of multi-combat for a minute here on the podcast, but
Yep.
no, just kidding. But I totally get where you guys, I totally understand. I would just have to disagree. I think it does. This nerf is a little too strong. I do agree there. I think they should either go with nerfing its defenses back or doing the negative magic. I don't think they should do both. That does seem a little bit extreme, but I do think it is too strong right now because I feel the wilderness should be a place that no matter who you are, if you're in there, you're at, it's a risky environment. And I feel like the last thing I want is for somebody who's maybe a lower level to go into the wilderness to PK, see somebody with, how much is a Din's Bulk? 5 mil. They see this item that's worth 5 mil and they go like, well, there's no point in even doing it. I'm going to move on to the next target. I'm going to keep looking around, or maybe whatever it is.
No offense, but even those kind of shitter PKers are never going to be able to kill a person that would bring a Din's Bulwark, even if they didn't have a Din's Bulwark,
but
in
like,
my opinion.
They should still feel like they have at least a chance, because I think discouraging, I guess, like solo players as well, and making them to maybe seek a team in order to get this Din Bulwark player isn't the healthiest for the wilderness. I think it should always be risky, even if you have tanky items.
But we kind of loop back around to Magpie's main point, which is if this is an attempt to try and fix PvP, it doesn't even address it. This isn't about PvP. PvP should be about players finding other players in the wilderness, and they should find other ways to rejuvenate it instead of just nerfing the best tank shield for people who are trying to risk stuff or go for pets or train prayer or whatever.
It just seems like I don't see it as a way of rejuvenating the wilderness or PvP, because like wilderness, it is a PvP zone, but it's not like Castle Wars where you go there and you're expecting to be like player versus player. Like they've changed it to like also incorporate a lot of PVM stuff to just get more players out there. And it's weird to be able to bring a setup where you eliminate almost all the risk as like a player could eliminate all the risk against them and go into the wilderness, because you're deciding to go into the wildy. You should plan accordingly. And I think I kind of like the negative magic, because now you might have to offset it with different gear, or you might have to think about, do I even bring the Din's Bulwark? Should I bring, I don't know, what's magic defensive?
This in combination with the black Dragonhide the black D'hide change just seems like them trying to help out bad PKers in my
You're
opinion.
forgetting also the main thing, which is the minus 25 magic bonus is literally useless, because if I have to tank a freeze, all I can do is take off my Din's Bulwark, and it's like the minus 25 isn't even there anymore. So
yeah, no, that's true. But I guess is the average player going to do that? That kind of adds to the skill of going, like, being a PVMer in the wilderness, I guess, even though it's not that big of a deal to just take off an item. But I do feel weird about having items in the game that can eliminate the risk so much that like players will just not even try to attack you because it's not worth the runes because you're not going to hit anything.
But the point is, you're already eliminating the risk with a Din's Bulwark because you're not able to fight them back. So you're basically telling them, yes, it's going to be a pain in the ass and it's going to be 5-minute kill to even kill me if I don't get to like level 30 wilderness or to the wilderness ditch in time. But on the other hand, you're pretty much guaranteed to not have resistance. Right. So if you do kill me, you're guaranteed.
When you go into chins, when you go fight people at chins, that's not the case. People could drop an AGS on you at any time. Yeah, it's a tricky one. We should move on from this.
We'll move on. It is tricky because everyone looks at the wilderness differently. But yeah, let's move on because we got some more where this came from. So here's a doozy coming up next. The toxic blowpipe. So yeah, some people are upset with the Din's Bulwark, but the toxic blowpipe is the topic of discussion when it comes to this rebalance change. So it says right here, the toxic blowpipe requires 75 range to wield, and it is the go-to option for many, or maybe even most, PVM situations. In terms of raw damage output, it leaps and bounds better than previous tiers of weaponry, like Carol's crossbow and the crystal bow, for example, and it outperforms some of the best in slot setups for other attack styles, even when using low-tier darts such as mithril or adamant. When the toxic blowpipe was originally pulled, we intended an attack speed of 3 game cycles. Due to an oversight with its introduction when using the rapid attack style, it was released with an attack speed of 2 game cycles. Most players have called for it to be slowed down, but if you played in the recent Trailblazers League, you'll know how altering the attack speed of a weapon completely changes how the gameplay feels, and they want to avoid this. So the blowpipe is an important part of old school RuneScape, so rather than just removing it altogether, we'd like to propose some changes that will allow it to remain viable in many situations, while still providing room for other ranged attacks to take spotlight. AK, they gonna nerf it. I believe the numbers they're going with is it's getting a 15 to 20% nerf all around.
Can we pause for a quick second before we get to the nerf?
Yes.
I think the fact that they put in that it was originally supposed to be a 3-tick, but due to an oversight it was 2-tick, that shouldn't even be in the blog because that's their mistake and they should have fixed that 6 years ago if that was their intention. Yeah. So Don't try and make us feel bad that you made a mistake 6 years ago and weren't willing to fix it.
Yeah.
That's my first point.
Heartless is coming out swinging.
No. I think it needs nerf. We'll get to the nerfs and then I'll say my opinion.
Okay, so all right, let's look at the ranged strength of the blowpipe. Currently, it's at 40 and they want to bring it down to 25. All right. But not just that, they also want to move down all the darts in general. So I don't know which one should we just stick with the dragon and rune darts?
They also cut the accuracy from 60 to 30 on the blowpipe. So right straight up in half. Yeah. So basically half for strength and for accuracy.
And with the darts, they're going to be tweaking the accuracy and the strength of many of them. So for example, dragon darts currently have 18 accuracy, 20 strength. They want to move it down to 15 accuracy, but keep the strength the same. But let's look at adamant darts where they're going to bring the 11 accuracy and 10 strength down to 7 accuracy and 8 strength. So they'll be nerfing a lot of different aspects of this weapon. So yeah, this will change which items are considered best in slot for certain encounters. Based on internal testing, we'd like to provide some examples of how these changes would impact specific face-off. So for example, the first one is bandos. Melee will generally surpass a toxic blowpipe after this change unless defense reducing specs are involved. I saw some numbers, some charts somebody posted on Reddit where a blowpipe with bronze darts and I think full void is still stronger than the best in slot melee for bandos.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah.
So that just sounds off, right? Just saying that right there. So with Zulrah, the toxic blowpipe will still be the best option for Zulrah's blue phase if you don't already own a twisted bow. Vorkath, the toxic blowpipe, will no longer be the best weapon for players who have not yet attained any dragon hunter weaponry. The use of a dragon or armadillo crossbow will be better than a toxic blowpipe when defense reducing specials when defense reducing special attacks are missed. So Dragon Warhammer, Bando's Godsword are the top two for that example. Using the Toxic Blowpipe with higher accuracy ranged armor will have higher DPS than with full Void Knight armor. As range accuracy now matters more with the Blowpipe. However, the Dragon and Armadillo crossbow will still be popular for the damage reducing effects of an anti-dragon fire shield. And then fight caves, melee will have higher DPS than the Toxic Blowpipe against higher defense monsters within the cave, but range has the benefit of higher uptime. We anticipate melee will be utilized more by those looking to optimize their completion speeds if they don't already have a twisted bow. So,
who's going first?
Floor is yours, Heartless. You started off.
Okay, let's hear the Iron Man perspective on all of this.
Okay, so as a man who spent nearly 300 hours getting his blowpipe, let's keep that in mind before I start my it's not a rant. I think this is okay. I'm keeping in mind also this is pretty much door in the face. This is as far as they would ever go with a nerf, and I think it's going to be scaled back. They've already said it has going to be. So I think this nerfs it in two different directions at the same time, which makes it a little too much. So the first is they're making it not very accurate anymore, and then they're making it a lot less range strength. So I think personally the Toxic Blowpipe should be really powerful and hit very accurately against monsters with really low defense, but be really weak against monsters with higher defense. That's the ideal world for me. So then they could balance content around it. Whereas right now it's just good against basically everything. I think we can all agree it's the most powerful item in the game and it needs a nerf. But this basically is cutting it by, I don't know, like 40%. As an Iron Man, it's going to change the meta if it came into the game like this. But at the same time, it's still very easy to get for the most part. You really Zeller doesn't really have any requirements. Sure, you have to get 87 Slayer, but as a main, it's super easy to farm. I don't know, I just think it's a little too much. That's all. I agree it needs nerfed, but only in one of the directions. So either make the darts weaker or make the accuracy weaker. What else did I want to say? Some more points. Oh, I think the other people so this obviously hurts Irons who have just gotten it or are just about to get it because it's going to hurt them doing Shamans and Hydra, but there are alternatives. The other thing that it's going to hurt is mains who are like, relying on the Toxic Blowpipe to get their bank up from maybe 50 to 100 mil if you're one of those people, and you're looking to get into chambers, so you need, to get 70 mil for, say, a Lance. This is going to hurt you. For solo content, it's not going to hurt you for, like, team content, because you can still get carried by T-bows. The people that are least affected are obviously ones that own T-bows, because that's still going to be useful at most bosses. So I guess my point is overall, I agree that it needs nerfed, but I think this is too far in one direction that they'll come back on it. It's a disgusting item, and it's easily the best in the game.
Very strong.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Do you think that was pretty tame, or do you expect me to get really mad?
I thought tables flipping.
Yeah, I thought when you started with Jagex's oversight or whatever, I thought you were gonna be like.
No, I am super mad at that specific sentence. Why would they put that in there? That's their fault. That's not on us. You made that mistake. That was like a very big mistake that you made 6 years ago. So if that's your issue with the Toxic Blowpipe, then just fix it 6 years ago. Don't wait 6 years. Tell us about that and then offer the nerf.
I don't think it was a mistake so much as it was like they just didn't think it would be so strong because of the rapid fire. It wasn't like because if it was a mistake, that would be like a day one patch of like, oh, Blowpipe accidentally released attacking one tick too fast.
But that sentence says it was a mistake.
It says it was an oversight.
It says it was an oversight, which is essentially a mistake. Another word for mistake, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is like the difference is, I know we're like arguing semantics, but the difference is they wake up the next day after the update and they're like, oh, holy shit! Like the Blowpipe attacks too fast. We made a mistake. Oh, we can just patch it immediately. Hotfix. Boom. Next update, attacks faster or attacks like slower.
Why didn't they do? Was it very obvious that the Blowpipe was disgusting day one? So why didn't they change it? Is my question.
An oversight though is when they wake up. They will wake up the next day and be like, "Oh wait, the Blowpipe attacks one tick faster. Oh yeah, let's leave it the way it is. Actually, it seems like it's pretty good. Like people seem to enjoy it with that faster." So it's like they didn't make a mistake so much as they made an error of judgment, thinking that it would be good to keep it like that.
Right. So they made a mistake and then said, "Oh, but it's okay." That's what you're saying. You're gonna make a good lawyer one day. Yeah, no, that I can get behind that now. I just thought it was a little bit strange that was in there. I mean, you could just come out and say like it's too powerful, it needs nerfed, and I think basically everyone in the game would agree with you that it's too powerful. Yeah. But you need to take a step back from, and if I can do it as someone who spent basically my entire summer getting a blowpipe, if I can do it, then I know you can do it too. Just take a step back and realize that this item that costs 3 mil should not be the best in the game for almost every situation.
And Magpie, before we get your perspective on all this, I have seen a lot of common arguments when it comes to like why are you even thinking about nerfing it? And one that I see a lot of players say is that you should have nerfed this 6 years ago. Now the meta has evolved around the toxic blowpipe. 6 years, it's too long. It's too late to change it. You have to leave it where it is. But I try to look at where old school RuneScape was as a game in 2015. That's when it came out, January 8th, 2015. And there's a graph somewhere. I don't have it in front of me, but if you're Googling around, you'll find it. And you'll see in 2013, old school RuneScape comes out. Huge spike in the player base. And then as time goes on, it really started going down low, the player base. And because nostalgia wears off quickly. And RuneScape, where RuneScape was in 2007, well, it's a lot of fun for a lot of people. Like, what, they had the Calfight Queen to kill, they had the King Black Dragon to kill, they had the Giant Mole. Like, I think that was it for the bosses that was released in 2013.
This item also restricts design space heavily. Because it's so powerful, you really, really, really have to be careful about what you do. And that's why I think there's almost no range strength in the game because of the toxic blowpipe.
Yeah, and it does seem that way, for like how a lot of content looks like it might be based around how the toxic blowpipe is. But just looking at where the game was, and even where Jagex was as developers for this game, we had 8 hours splashing where you can go to Clan Wars. I used to do this. I know you guys started in 2018, so you might have missed it, but it was stupid how before I went to bed, I would go to Clan Wars. You find a partner. There's people just waiting outside. You go, you want to splash on each other for 8 hours? Sure. You splash on each other. You go to sleep. And I just made like 300k experience overnight just from AFKing because that's just how they had it. And you did it in Clan Wars because I forget why, but like random events I think would prevent you from doing your actions. And this way you would continue. And then after 8 hours, you get logged, or 6 hours. And you could do the same thing with Nightmare Zone and Guthins for your melee experience. You could AFK overnight and just get crazy amounts of experience for like not even playing. So that's what was going on back then. And Jagex tried pulling it. It failed. Then they did an integrity change years later, and it worked. So what I'm trying to say is the player base was dropping. So they bring out God Wars, and it boosted up a little bit, but then it continued dropping. And I think Jagex looked and like, we need to boost player numbers. How do we do that? Well, what's more exciting than a really cool new boss that drops a lot of money and drops this new weapon that absolutely shreds everything. So they did that, and that was like the start of the player base kind of increasing again, because then they started coming out with like, you know, the Sire. They came out with all the Slayer bosses, and then, you know,
probably the reason Zulrah has essentially no requirements as well.
Yeah, so Zulrah was like the first boss that was like purely for old school RuneScape. As a way to boost player numbers, it's exciting to be like, yo, there's new weapons out that's like stronger than everything.
I'm pretty sure Magpies has made this point in the past, though. Like, when you do that, it's good to bring players in, but for the long-term health of the game, things like Zulrah and Vorkath are not good.
I totally agree, and I think a lot of people will agree as well. But when you look at where it was in 2015, I think Jagex was for a long time, Jagex was very short-sighted. Why would you allow players to splash for 8 hours for such a long time? And it's because they're like, well, people want 99 magic. People want 99 combat stats. So we'll just...
They never knew the game was going to survive this long.
Yeah, and here we are today where it's bigger and better than ever. And many of us would think it's like the golden age. So the last thing I want to say is we've heard many devs over the years say the blowpipe is a huge problem and they wish they could just remove it. And I think now they're in a spot where they're like, we need to, if we want to introduce Raids 3 at some point or a new boss, we need to kind of look at what we're going on. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Magpie, what's your take on all this?
I vacillated a lot back and forth between this.
You've what?
I vacillated. I went back and forth.
Look at these words he's using on us, Dills.
Yeah, what is this? What does that mean?
It means I just like couldn't decide, and I went back and forth on two.
Vacillated.
I wanted to like. give you guys the
Been
floor.
reading some heavy law texts over here.
Yeah, I wanted to give you guys the floor because I didn't know what points you were going to raise because I read a lot of different perspectives on this. Like, on the one hand, I try to distance myself from the quote-unquote sweat lords in the high-level community. Like, yes, I teach raids and, like, arguably the biggest OSRS. I think population-wise, it's the biggest OSRS server. We do raids, and I teach raids in that. I, help the vitality of the server. I'm going on, like, a joke harm or rebuild. I do speedruns of things like the Inferno. So I recognize that part. But on the other hand, I also resonate with the casual player base a lot more. I'd rather do an hour-long raid that's just full of laughter instead of a 10-minute speedrun. And there's definitely life outside the game.
You're like the you know how a king would go hang out with the peasants, right?
I was trying to say I'm not a man of the people. I'm not saying I'm like the voice of the voiceless or whatever. I'm not like that far, but
Have you guys seen Game of Thrones?
no. I haven't,
Some of it.
But
There's like
Not
a
very
high
much.
priest, and he always wears like really shaggy robes because he's like, I'm a high priest of this city, but I am no better than the common person.
okay, I'm not like going into that like level of try-hardiness where it's like I'm not saying like I am a man of the people or whatever. I'm just saying like I can see both sides of things. And
Yeah. I jest.
when we're talking about the blowpipe nerf, it's funny because there's two main sides, right? Like 95% of the players either are on the side that they should either not nerf it at all, or if they do, nerf it very, very minimally, or the other side, which is like they recognize that there needs, and I think Heartless falls into this camp, they recognize it needs a nerf in some way, shape, or form. Not to the extent maybe of the post, but they still think that it needs to be nerfed in like a significant way. And what's funny is that both the high-level community and the casual community are split in terms of which one they think is better. A lot of high-level players don't want the nerf. A lot of high-level players do. A lot of casual players do want the nerf, and a lot of them don't. And I'll just go through very briefly like all the different arguments. On the one hand, is the blowpipe nerf a good thing? You could argue, yes, blowpipe is disgusting. I've always said it's a 500 mil weapon in disguise. The fact that it's obtained from a farmable boss doesn't change the fact that it's really, really ridiculously overpowered to the point where the meta for almost everything in the game is use a blowpipe. If you're doing Slayer, use a blowpipe. If you're doing Theater of Blood, you bring a blowpipe while you're learning it. If you're doing Chambers, you bring a blowpipe, things like that. On the other hand, is it a bad thing to have a really accessible weapon where where there is a cost of use and generally there are better options available? Is it such a bad thing to give players an incentive to go for that kind of good all-around weapon? A friend of mine made that point, and I thought it was like what got me to first start going on the fence, because at first I was like pro nerf, and then for a time I was anti nerf, and then I read that and I was like, now I actually can't decide, because the blowpipe has a high skill cap in the sense that if you are new to the game and you're using the blowpipe for the first time, chances are you're using it wrong, where you're not actually maximizing your DPS. You're either eating food, you're not attacking constantly. The only way to turn the blowpipe into a killing machine is if you attack every 2 ticks. So you attack every single time you can attack, and every 1.2 seconds you're firing off a dart. If you don't give the blowpipe that kind of speed, then it's not going to be as good as like a dragon crossbow in a lot of situations. But with that said, when you nerf the blowpipe, there's going to be a lot of ramifications. And I think my main point is Jagex is trying to fit in one like dev blog update post a change that's going to take months, if not years. Because I went back and I tracked every single piece of content that came out after the blowpipe, where the blowpipe is either best in slot or really useful, either for someone who doesn't have max cash or as someone who doesn't have a T-bow or a scythe. So if you tweak the blowpipe, you are going to have to tweak all the content that we know has explicitly been stated, like they've released the content and balanced it with the blowpipe in mind. So that means Inferno needs to be rebalanced. Chambers of Zarek, Theater of Blood. Hydra, Grotesque Guardians, Vorkath. even things like Hespora and some quest bosses have all come out after the blowpipe, and they've all had either the blowpipe's power in mind when balancing the bosses to be like, okay, the way that these bosses are accessible is because blowpipe will destroy them really easily, been changed to make the blowpipe not as strong, like Theater of Blood, for example. If you nerf the blowpipe, you have to go back and look at every single piece of content, like the Inferno, like Chambers of Zarek, and decide where you want them to be. It's not a good idea to just like change the blowpipe and not change any of that, because things like Mutadials will become a pain in the ass. A lot of players will be gated out of doing Chambers of Zarek. And the players, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing for early mid-game players, because the players who can be good enough to do things like end-game raids will actually benefit, because less people doing raids means the prices of items go up. If you read the dev blog, I'm going to subtly flex and say I immediately bought raids items because they're immediately going to go up if this nerf happens. But
If I slide a little Iron Man comment in there, Magpies?
yeah, go for it.
So right now, currently, I can compete because I very rarely miss damage ticks with the blowpipe. I'm a pretty sweaty Chambers of Zarek raider. I can compete with people with T-bows and get pretty consistent points close to them. But with the blowpipe nerf, they're just going to be able to sit there and just Rudy Tooty Shooty with their T-bows, and they'll be carried by them. I'm not saying that they're not good players, but you know what I mean? The T-bow's so powerful.
Yeah.
And even though I'm going full Sweatlord, I just won't be able to compete anymore.
Yeah.
So I will be disincentivized from raiding with my friends, many of whom at this point of the game have twisted bows. So realistically, I could still do solos or duos with other people that have blowpipes or armored crossbows and stuff like that, and I'd still get even points with them because we're both losing DPS, but it will disincentivize me from going on group raids with my friends, which is not a very nice feeling.
That's a very valid take, and that's actually what I was going to say, which is the other side of things is that people with a twisted bow are going to be way better off after this change. If you go to Mutadials and you sit there with a dragon crossbow hating your life while it's basically burning through your supplies, or you go to Theater of Blood and you're trying to learn with a half-ass blowpipe versus someone with a twisted bow, you are going to be at a way bigger disadvantage, and the wealth gap is going to be exponentially bigger. So on that side, going back to the point that my friend made, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a really good stopgap weapon like the blowpipe be accessible to almost all the players. And the other thing is, like, the blowpipe is fun to use, right? Like, you basically got a machine gun in your hands, you just point it, shoot it, everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that to get maximum DPS, you really have to be attacking on all your ticks. Yeah, you're totally right. You only are going to get max DPS if you know what you're doing and know the game mechanics correctly. Especially at a place like Chambers of Zarek, where dodging is also important.
Yeah, you go in as a learner to Chambers of Zarek, and even though you're supposed to bring a blowpipe into the final boss, a lot of people make the mistake of bringing in a crossbow because it's a lot more forgiving. So with that in mind, if you're asking me where I stand, I'm going to do the really like cowardly thing and say I'm not going to take either side, and I'm actually going to go for the third option. And I'm going to say, if you want to rework the blowpipe, that's fine, but you're going to have to go back and look at every single boss. And I'm not even talking about like, oh, the Inferno monsters need to have their HP reduced by X amount so that the blowpipe is the same DPS, so that people learning the Inferno now aren't disadvantaged versus the people who learned it 3 years ago. I'm talking like, okay, you want to lower the HP levels of bosses, but you also need to tweak their magic levels so that the Twisted Bow doesn't become even more strong for things like the Inferno, for things like Theater of Blood. Oh, and also you need to change their defense levels slightly because of the accuracy, but then how do you factor that defense nerf to things like melee? If you tweak Orcath's defense level, you're going to have a bigger issue with that as well. And so it comes down to a lot more than just like, oh, reduce everything's HP by 15% if the blowpipe gets a 15% nerf. You have to look at like time to kill simulations and the average kill times for things like this. And it's going to take months for every piece of content that's come out. So the one thing I will say Jagex messed up on is they have the right idea, but for them to think that this is going to be a really easy, like 1 week update that they can slide in before combat achievements. Which, by the way, if they have something like a sub 65 Inferno, which are like some Jagex mods are suggesting, there are some like Twitter posts of like, I think it was Mod Arcane, maybe, who, shout out to Mod Arcane, he said, like, he posted a picture of, like, an Inferno kill with, like, under 65 minutes, and he said, like, combat achievements practice. There's almost no way you're going to get, like, even 10% of Inferno players to get a sub 65 with a nerfed blowpipe. It's just not going to happen for most players. So if you want to, like, release the combat achievements after the blowpipe nerf, you're going to have to rethink a lot of those diary tasks. And for them to think that they can release a blowpipe nerf like this and then slide it in before combat achievements and think everything is fine is really naive, in my opinion. So that's...
Yeah, I think you just opened my mind that it goes a lot deeper than I thought about it previously. There's the blowpipe just affects the whole game, doesn't it? So if you change it, the whole game is completely changed.
Yep.
And yeah, they need a contingency plan to look at that for sure. Damn, that's a good point that I never really thought about. Like having one of those items that just anyone can afford and be able to, if they get good, compete with other players is a really, really valid point. And that's one of those I never really thought about it in that way. But yeah, I think people that are suffering are the ones that are just getting into PVM content. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of players that are really suffering. And obviously Ironman, but if even if we just ignore Ironman, I think the problem is deep enough that you could make all these arguments validly.
Yeah. I've always said, like, the gear that you have generally doesn't matter. 90% of the time, it doesn't matter. Your weapon matters a significant amount, but even then, it's not like the end of the world. I've had friends who've, like, staked their bank one night or lost their bank somehow, and, you know, they were drunk or they got lured into PvP or whatever, and they come into raids with, like, a meme setup and a blowpipe and black d'hide, and it's like, they're going to be fine because they know exactly what they're doing, versus a guy who, like, bought a bunch of bonds or whatever. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but for example, bought a bunch of bonds, bought a T-bow, and is, like, just starting out PVM and has no idea. Like, I would take the friend who has, like, a 500k bank over the T-bow wearer. But now, with the T-bow being, like, indirectly buffed because the alternatives are that much worse with the blowpipe nerf, I honestly can't say that I would take that, even if the player was, like, 100 times worse.
I'm really disappointed. You mentioned Vorkath. That's one that's super disappointing. I remember when I played my main, getting to Vorkath was like one of my first goals because I wasn't good enough to do Zulrah because Zulrah's, you know, even though there's no requirements, it's a difficult boss to learn.
Yeah.
And Vorkath is pretty easy. You know, you can get your Elite Void, which is a grind, but, you know, it's not that bad, 12 hours or something. And then you get a blowpipe, you go in with like a 10 mil setup, and you can make some serious bank. And, you know, you just grind and have a good time. And that was a great entry to PV, or like there's some minor mechanics in there, you know, the acid walk, things like that.
Yeah.
That's just not going to be viable for players anymore.
That's pretty much it. I mean, you are going to have to find a way to, like, balance out the blowpipe. I still think it needs some kind of nerf because it is still really, really, really strong, to the point where the last thing I will say, the last new point I'm going to raise, is a lot of times the meta in RuneScape isn't really fun. And I remember when Hydra came out and people were, like, going in with Monster Examine and, like, hybrid gear, mage, melee, range, and then, like, 20 minutes in, like, the secret was out, you just bring a blowpipe in and you just keep shooting the blowpipe. Or if you have a T-bow, you just use the T-bow. Like, a lot of times the best gear just comes down to bring a blowpipe and blowpipe the hell out of it, which is not really fun when it comes to variety in your content. So maybe they can change that. And already now it's like, if you look at just like the way raids is going to change, you might have to bring in a crossbow for mystics. You might bring in a rapier or a lance for mutadiles.
Which is why I think the best way for it to be good would be if they made the blowpipe hit really high against things with almost no defense, because that makes sense, right? Like, you're throwing darts at them, so that theoretically is what it should be doing. So if you are with a team and you hit a lot of Warhammers or whatever, then that should be fine. But against monsters that are really tough, like mutadiles, maybe that's somewhere where it could be weaker.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that's probably the best way to balance it. And then then it would remain best in slot at some places like Hydra, but maybe it wouldn't be best at Vorkath. It's tough. They got a dilemma on their hands.
It is a tough one.
It's tricky.
I personally think it does need a nerf. It is very strong. It should still be strong, but it shouldn't be the one-stop shop for most PVM content. Now, I'm not as great as crunching the numbers or knowing how it would affect, like, maybe like Iron Men specifically, right?
Yeah, surely Addy darts are no longer going to be good enough. Like I go in Chambers of Xeric and get like in a 3+2 with people. Last night I did a 3+2 in a Weedy Riz with two guys. One had a T-bow. They're both 600 KC, and I had 45% of the points.
True.
Just because I like was full sweat lord.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff just won't happen anymore. And I was using Addy darts.
Yeah.
Like you're probably gonna need at least Rune, if not Dragon, to compete for sure.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's nobody likes to get nerfed. Like nobody likes to be weaker than they used to be. So that's the hard thing. Of course, people are going to be complaining. Of course, like personally, I want to be as strong as possible. I don't want to be weaker than I was yesterday. But I try to look at like the game, the health of the game. I look at, we all want new PVM content to come out. At what point do you just like, we see how hard it is to introduce ranged items?
Here's the problem is with that. The problem with that is that's okay if everyone gets weaker. Well, that's an argument as well. If everyone gets weaker, is that okay? But that's not the case because people with twisted bows are not getting weaker, and that's the wealth gap the Magpies was alluding to before.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
A large chunk of the player base are getting weaker, but elite players will not be, for the most part.
Mm-hmm. And that's that. It is tricky. They're clearly looking at their game direction and trying to figure out, when I look at like even like the new weapons we've seen come into the game, like when you look at ranged, it's the Twisted Bow and the Dragon Hunter crossbow that kind of are really the only ones that come to mind. I mean, Ballista, but let's ignore that one. The Armadale crossbow doesn't get used that much at all. The Dragon Hunter crossbow is only good because it has this perk that it helps you with against dragons, and then the Twisted Bow with the whole magic attack perk that increased damage there. But I do look at like power creep, and I look at how other MMORPGs avoid the whole power creep issue. And they take a much drastic approach, and I do like the way RuneScape does their like new weapons and new armors, but it is so much harder to balance because for the most part, every piece of gear that's been released and meta gear in the past still has its purpose for the most part. But when you look at a game like World of Warcraft, I used to play World of Warcraft for years. Every year to 2 years, they come up with a new expansion, and in order to introduce new items, they literally just make every item that came before this new expansion is now irrelevant. Mm-hmm. Like, you could have the rarest weapon in the game, but if you get a new common weapon from this new expansion, it's going to be better. And that's their way of doing it. Or look at Destiny. They come out with a new update, they literally bring this, they pick certain meta weapons and they go like, yeah, these are just no longer the meta. They call it sunsetting, and they basically lower down the stats. I'm not going to go into the details, but they lower down the stats so it's no longer really relevant. And this is so that they can introduce new weapons. A lot of people hate that. And it's totally understandable. It's kind of frustrating with World of Warcraft. It's one of my biggest gripes. I spend why I don't play it anymore, because you could spend all year trying to get these items, and then a year later they're not relevant anymore but that's how World of Warcraft keeps new content exciting, so that they can bring out new content, a whole new plethora of gear. So it's just a whole different game style. The only reason I bring that up is because power creep is like a really tough thing to avoid in MMOs, and RuneScape is trying to keep all gear relevant. But how do you keep all gear relevant while also introducing new gear, right? There's only so many corners, like so many niches you can fill before people are like, okay, yeah, what the hell? Why am I going to go to raids, kill raids 3 if it's like, well, this new weapon is just strong in the desert or whatever it is, right? They can serve their purpose, but there comes a point where you're like, I just want some new killer gear. And I get where it's like hard to do that when you have really strong gear.
This is a deeply complicated one, and there's just so many layers to it. And I think we've provided some really good information for listeners to be able to make up their own decision, or at least you have to have a really good think about this one, because it's it's a lot deeper than just what your feelings are connected to it, for sure.
You have to look at what's coming down the road. And I mean, do we just never want new range gear? And we want to just stick to the blowpipe being super strong?
Yeah. Magpies, do you think they're setting up for range strength gear to be implemented?
100%. 100%.
Now,
like 100%. There's going to be a new like best in slot range chest plate,
etc. or whatever.
Yeah, or best
now,
in slot.
won't that just make the wealth gap between players that can afford these probably going to be super expensive items as well? You know what I mean? Unless this range strength is common, the average player will never. I always say the average player won't be able to afford a T-bow and won't be able to afford, a scythe. So the elite community, if these drops come from something like raids, this won't balance the blowpipe. It'll just make the wealth gap even larger than it was before.
Yeah, it's also not going to be a fun item. Like, part of the biggest appeal about like doing content on release is hoping that you can be the one to like snag the first item. Maybe you can try it out a bit before you like split your team or something. And if you snag like a new best in slot range chestplate, that literally the biggest appeal is it turns your blowpipe into what it used to be a year ago. It's not gonna be the same as like, oh, there's this cool new item, there's a scythe in the game that hits like a monster 3 times, there's a twisted bow that can hit like 100s. I need to try that.
It's just gonna turn you into be able to do all the old meta strategies while everyone else is struggling. And yeah, the only people who are gonna afford that are the ones who are really rich or can do the content on release, which is usually people that are really rich.
Mm-hmm.
So
you even saw with Chambers of Xeric, they wanted to bring out twisted armor, but it just turned out to be like, it's just unnecessary because range was so strong as it is. We don't need more armor to buff range. So,
and if that's the case, then why is the twisted bow untouched? So a little curious to me about the range that if they're planning on bringing that out at some point.
It's tricky, and I think my closing argument would be, they took a long time to do this nerf. They should have done this nerf a long time ago, but I think they need to be adjusting. They need to be rebalancing things more often. I just mean, like, if you're going to nerf the blowpipe next month, fine, go ahead and nerf it, but don't take another 2 years to balance other things out around it.
The problem with that is you get into the territory where you can start to devalue people's accomplishments. If they were constantly changing items, I wouldn't know whether to buy them or go for them as an Iron Man, or whether or not it's going to devalue, say, let's say you grinded for the Hydra pet or something like that, and now there's all of a sudden some new method because they buffed, I don't know, whatever, the rapier. So now you can or the Dragon Hunter lance, you know what I mean? So there's some new method that comes out that devalues your accomplishments or grinds. That's the danger.
They introduce a Dragon Hunter staff or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, say they come out with a magic staff that just slaughters it.
Yeah, I guess what I should have said with like rebalancing is that go ahead and scale the blowpipe back. If you want to do it this much, fine, but just be prepared to scale it up, buff it a month later if you're like, okay, yeah, now we're watching shit and it's not doing well. Or if you're going to scale it back this month, that's fine, but then at least a couple months down the road, maybe even less, if Hydra is suddenly a crazy hard to do, maybe adjust that accordingly. Like, the problem is that we've seen, since I've played RuneScape, I can think of 3 times they've nerfed stuff, and that is just so little for a game that's been released for 8 years. And the 3 that come to mind is the splashing in the Nightmare Zone that I mentioned earlier. The next one is the Ballista and Void range when it used to be so incredibly strong. It took them a while to nerf that for PvP. And then this is the next one. It's those were I don't think I'm missing any. If I am, please let me know. But I do think that they take too long to address a problem. Maybe they're worried about what the community is going to say, because like, look at what happens. I mean, JMods are getting death threats. That's fucked up, right?
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, there's no place for that.
So maybe that's why they're a little bit more gun shy, or maybe I probably shouldn't say that. Maybe they're a little bit more hesitant when it comes to doing a nerf because of how much the backlash is going to be. But they need to be quicker on these nerfs, I guess. What I'm trying to say. They need to be like, when they see an issue, they need to tackle it.
The one thing I'm also going to say is that the fact that this is like not going to be pulled is pretty damning, because the entire point, the reason why we're here today, the reason why we need 2 RuneScapes is because partially. Okay, let's leave the microtransaction garbage out of RuneScape 3 for a second. Imagine RuneScape 3 didn't have microtransactions. The reason why we're playing old school RuneScape is because Jagex turned around and said, you know what would be good for the game is if we overhaul a lot of what people take for granted about the combat system, because we're struggling, we're running out of ideas for how we can introduce new bosses and new mechanics. So we need to create an evolution of combat. And so it's very cyclical if they decide to release a total overhaul of the combat system in old school relative to how it used to be. It's obviously not going to be as drastic, but if they overhaul a lot of weapons and stuff like that without polling it, it's a pretty symbolic gesture of the uselessness of giving people the ultimate say in the game or whatever. Because we're literally here because Evolution of Combat was such a disaster and such a garbage update for a lot of people. You can like RuneScape 3 PVM. I think it's like really interesting. A lot of people enjoy it, but at the end of the day, people said, we don't want this in the game. We don't want this in the game. We don't want this in the game. Jagex shoved it down their throats. Is that what they're doing now? I don't know.
Arguably, yeah. You could argue that for sure.
People will say it's a slippery slope, and it could be, but I also think that leaving these sort of changes to the community is, in the end, I'm going to say the community as a whole, like we are not smart when it comes to game direction. We're very selfish when we vote.
People aren't rational enough to vote without their emotions. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and then if you leave it to that, again, I'm sorry to keep referencing it, but I think it's just such a strong example that they pulled the splashing for 6 hours, I think 2 times, and each time it failed at like 20%. Like 20% people said, let's remove it. And then they were like, okay, this is an integrity change. You shouldn't be able to AFK magic over the course of like literally not playing for 8 hours every single night. So they did the integrity change.
Let's be honest, none of these would pass if they were pulled.
None of them would, because nobody wants to be weaker, and we look at our character. How does this affect our character? We don't look at how does this affect the game.
If this was pulled, I would vote no, personally. Even though I agree that it might need a nerf. If it was a poll, I would vote no.
Yeah, because we're like, we know what the game is like with the blowpipe right now, and we're having fun. Look how great the community's doing. We don't know how it's going to feel afterwards. So we can move on unless you guys have closing arguments.
Yeah, I think we should move on.
The last thing I'll say is that they are going to be bringing beta worlds this upcoming week, so you can test all these changes.
I think we've had a nice healthy episode here.
Oh, but we ain't done yet.
A lot to think about.
Yeah, that's true. So those were the big ones. We can go through these a little bit quicker because these are a little bit minor. Some of them are kind of cool though. So the first, and now this is the category of they called buffing the bad. So they want to buff the Dragon Bone necklace and the Bone Crusher necklace. These are basically prayer necklaces. So they want to reduce the prayer requirement from 80 to 70. And they want to remove some of the special effects that are accompanied by these, which are burying bones, give you prayer points back, stuff like that. So, and they want to make all the stats for both of those similar to a glory. Right now, they're pretty much useless. The only time I ever use them is when I need prayer bonus, which is whenever I'm doing RD agility, because I don't have 90 agility yet. But that's about it.
Yeah.
Does this matter to you guys at all?
It's fine. Yeah.
So this will be disgustingly broken for Chinning Monkey Madness 2 caves.
True. I forgot about that.
If you bring a Dragon Bone necklace and a Bone Crusher in your inventory, or a Bone Crusher necklace, I guess, if you can mix them, this turns the stats here. They say it's like a glory. It's actually more like a Furia with a lot of prayer bonus. It's a plus 12 prayer bonus, and so what this is going to do is this is going to help you like camp melee prayer, and as you're chinning monkeys, I don't know if it'll be better than the range strength and anguish gives you, but if it is, you're going to be able to chin monkeys, have them die, and when you kill like a 6 stack of monkeys, you're going to get a bunch of prayer points just like that, plus the prayer bonus, plus the prayer potions they drop already is going to make like you're basically going to be a high priest, to reference what you called me earlier. You're basically going to be a saint at that point with all the prayer. Yeah.
I mean, if that's maybe like a small thing, but I mean, if Nightmare Zone's in the game for melee, then like whatever, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so it's turning a useless item to something strong. I'll just be happy that, what is it, Dragon Bone necklace being 1 in 1,000 or something on Vorkath, and it's worth like 50k.
Yeah.
You can get a little bit more excited for such a rare drop. Okay, the next one is Crystal Armor and Crystal Bow. So even after the Toxic Blow changes, Crystal Armor and the Crystal Bow are still stuck with fairly underwhelming performance in relation to their high requirements and maintenance costs. Currently, Crystal Armors have a special set effect where each piece will give you a 3% damage boost and 6% accuracy bonus, with the full set giving you 15% boost and 30% accuracy with crystal weapons. They want to make the following changes where they increase the damage bonus with crystal bows when wearing a full set of crystal armor from 15% to 20%. So if they're going to nerf the blowpipe, they basically mean let's bring some other items as healthier, or maybe not healthier, that's subjective, but like as a different alternative if you're not going to be using the blowpipe for everything. Sounds pretty cool. I like the idea of busting out the crystal bow for something.
Yeah. But you're still not going to be able to use it for Slayer.
Oh, because of the helmet, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Crystal Armor has a helmet, so...
Just wait till Raids 3 comes out and you get the Crystal Slayer helmet attachment. Oh boy.
This might be best in slot for Vorkath, actually, with a Salve Amulet, with a blowpipe, or with a crystal bow instead of a blowpipe. Yeah.
And now they also want to. So moving on, there's additional changes too. So these are, we don't need to spend too much time, but they're just kind of cool. I don't think there's anyone who could be upset about this because they're very minor to almost every player. I don't know, unless you guys know. You guys can chime in. So the first one are Warhammers. They want to propose a change to bronze to rune Warhammers. Basically because they're completely outclassed by battle axes, even though they have the same attack speed. So they want to change the requirements to equip them from attack level to strength. So instead of needing 40 attack for rune Warhammer, you need 40 strength. And they want to increase the strength bonus they offer to be slightly lower than the battle axe counterpart. So it is only slightly lower. And then the Dragon Warhammer would also require 60 strength and not 60 attack to use. This might change some things for peers.
Hobby Maulers, basically, is the only noticeable.
Yeah.
They can now use them. But I don't know how that's going to affect them because Dragon Warhammer sucks in PvP. Because you can just sip a restore.
Yeah, true. Other changes to do with maces, spears, and hastas. They basically want to improve the attack speed to match scimitars so that they're at least an alternative. And they also want to change the attack speed of dragon maces to 4 game cycles instead of 5.
This would be cool because if you are extremely like involved in old school and you actually want to like min-max your basic Slayer setup as an Iron Man or as like an early game player, if this goes through, you can see what's weak to crush versus what's weak to stab. And if the mace and the scimitar have like similar strength bonuses and attack speeds, you can just be like, oh, this is weak to stab, or like weak to crush, time to bring out the old mace versus something weak to slash. You still use your scimitar, and then something weak to stab, you can bring in like a hasta.
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty cool. But I wish there was more variety in the sense that like I wish instead of just like speeding up their attack, you just make them slightly stronger so that the DPS is going to be similar. It's just you have to decide between a weapon that hits high but is a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's true. What I'm happy about is going back to like when I was fucking 15 years ago when I was playing. I was such a low level. I could finally get rune items. And I remember being so excited to try out the new rune mace, try out the new rune longsword, try out the new rune battle axe, and like the rune two-hander. What? That thing's sick. But then I look back on it and you're like, wow, I definitely could have, the rune scimitar is the end all. It's the blowpipe of the rune weapons.
Yeah.
So I just love the idea of new players getting a rune warhammer, getting excited for this new rune weapon. And you know what? It's not going to be significantly worse than, it probably might be still significantly worse than a scimitar, but maybe not as much now. That's neat. But keeping on in line with rune armor, they want to, or with rune items, they want to rebalance some rune armor. So basically they want to take the heavier versions of rune armor, which I mean is the plate body instead of the chainmail, the rune full helmet instead of the medium helmet. They're going to add a higher, they're going to add a Increase the negative. Oh yeah, so they're gonna reduce the ranged attack bonus from it. So basically, if you want a PK, you want some defense to go along with your ranged attack, you could opt. It makes more sense to opt for the medium helmet or the chain body, right? Like right now, if you're PKing and stuff, you might see some rune full helmets instead of rune medium helmets, but I don't know if that would change, but I think that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be completely removing the negative range bonuses from the rune medium helmets, the rune square shield, all that fun stuff. And then the last thing they said is they want to hear your feedback on all these changes. And guess what? They heard it.
Oh, well, they're gonna get it.
Oh, they're gonna get it.
Yeah.
Damn, that's quite the blog.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting live stream this week. One thing they said is if you're just gonna give them feedback and say the changes to the blowpipe suck, they're not gonna look at that. They want to hear like in what way, like, or what do you propose instead. But if you're just gonna get like upset about the nerf, they want to hear alternatives or like why you don't like the nerf.
Yeah,
it's not really constructive if you just say things suck because they suck.
I've got a great song request for today, by the way.
Okay, wicked. I guess closing note before we move off of this is that they're going to look at the Twisted Bow and the Scythe of Vitur, since those didn't really get any nerfs at all. They're going to take a look at that to see where if they deserve something, if they deserve a nerf. Woo. Okay. How you guys feeling after that one?
Pretty good. It took a lot out of me, but
drink a lot of water, I'll say that. All right, well, before we move out of here, let's move on to the Patreon segment. So if you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/thewildernesspodcast. All your support is greatly appreciated. You help cover the monthly fees, so thank you. It helps a lot. I had to increase the costs because we've been podcasting so hard. I'd increase it for a little bit, so that's you guys help offset that cost. I can't thank you enough. So our supporter of the week is Matt Sebelden. So thank you so much for supporting the show. Thank you to everyone who does it and who continues to do it. It does help greatly. I can't appreciate that much. I can't appreciate that any less. Oh fuck! I'm getting fucking tongue tied here. Anywho, if you want to hang out with us in game, you can do that at WildCC. If you want to join our Discord, check it out on Twitter at The Wilderness RS. You'll see it pinned there. It's also in the show notes, the description. You can do that as well. And our email is thewildernesspodcast@gmail.com. We've got a few emails. We also asked you guys to send in what RuneScape means to you and some memories you have, and we're going to pick a few that we like. We were going to do it this episode, but as you can see, we've been running on pretty late, so let's save it for next week. That is probably best. And here we are. It's the song of the week time. Heartless, what do you got for us?
All right, so we're gonna go with Coil this week. The song you unlock from fighting Zulrah.
My favorite.
And it's actually it's a great tune. Got some great piano in the background on that one.
It is my favorite old school song, so I'm always down for that suggestion. I think I recommended it the first time I was ever on the podcast as well.
It's a possibility. It is a solid.
It's a banger for sure.
It's a good song, and it was made by none other than Mod Ash himself.
Oh, this just makes it even better.
Yeah, that just makes the song so much better. It's a great song. So yeah, let's Coil is the music track that is unlocked during this fight with Zulrah. All right, guys, I'm exhausted after this one. What do you say we get on out of here and we'll catch everyone on the next one?
Yep.
Sounds good. See you later.